How could one sentence at my husband's birthday dinner end our entire marriage? The night started with laughter and ended with a courier delivering divorce papers to my door. What really happens when your biggest mistake isn't a secret anymore? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The kitchen counter was cluttered with grocery bags, birthday cake ingredients scattered like evidence of my guilt. I stared at the recipe card, my phone buzzing with another text from Miles. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. This sneaking around is getting exciting. I quickly deleted the message before Evan could see it, though he was probably grading papers in his home office anyway. Always grading papers, always focused on those middle school kids instead of me. Mum, when's Dad's birthday dinner? 8-year-old Aiden wandered into the kitchen, his dark hair messy from playing outside. In 2 hours, sweetie. Go wash up. I forced a smile, the same practiced expression I'd been wearing for months. The perfect wife, the devoted mother, the woman who definitely wasn't meeting her coworker for secret coffee dates. My phone rang. June, Evan's mother. Lyris, honey, do you need help with dinner preparations? I could bring the salad. No thanks, June. I've got everything under control. The lie came easily. I had nothing under control. My marriage was falling apart. I was having an emotional affair with Miles, and I was standing here pretending to care about Evan's 35th birthday. Are you sure? You sound stressed. I'm fine, just busy. I ended the call before she could offer more help. June meant well, but her constant hovering reminded me how much I'd grown to resent this family, this life, this suburban prison I'd trapped myself in. The front door opened. Evan's voice carried through the house. I'm home. Something smells amazing. I hadn't started cooking yet. The smell was probably the vanilla candles I'd lit to mask my anxiety. Evan appeared in the doorway, still wearing his teacher clothes, khakis and a button-down shirt that had seen better days. At 35, he looked tired. We both did. How was school? I asked, not really caring about the answer. Good. The kids made me a birthday card. He held up a construction paper creation covered in glitter. Mrs. Patterson's class. They're sweet. Sweet. Everything was always sweet with Evan. Sweet kids, sweet gestures, sweet little life. When had sweet become suffocating? That's nice. I turned back to the ingredients. Your mum called, wanted to help with dinner. I told her not to bother you. You work so hard. Evan moved closer, probably trying to hug me. I stepped away, reaching for the flour. I should start cooking. People will be here soon. Lyris, his voice was soft. Are we okay? The question hung in the air like smoke. Were we okay? I was fantasizing about another man while making his birthday dinner. I was counting the minutes until I could escape to my phone and text Miles. I was standing in our kitchen wondering how I'd ended up married to someone so fundamentally boring. Of course we're okay. Why would you ask that? You seem distant lately, like you're somewhere else. I was somewhere else. I was in Miles's office, laughing at his jokes. I was imagining what it would be like to be with someone who understood ambition, who wanted more than a modest teacher's salary and quiet suburban evenings. I'm just tired. Work's been crazy. Another lie. Work was the same insurance claims processing it had always been. The only thing that made it interesting was Miles. Evan nodded, but his eyes looked hurt. Maybe after my birthday we could plan a weekend away, just us. Maybe. I started measuring flour aggressively. Shouldn't you be getting ready? Your family will be here soon. He stood there for another moment, and I could feel him wanting to say something else. Instead, he just said, I love you, Lyris. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words felt foreign, like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my sister Tara. How's the birthday boy preparation going? Still can't believe you're cooking for Mr. Excitement. I smiled despite myself. Tara got it. She understood that I was wasted on someone like Evan. At 29, she was living in the city, dating interesting men, building a career in marketing. She was everything I should have been. It's fine, just getting through it. You deserve better, sis. You know that, right? I glanced toward the hallway where Evan had disappeared. Did I deserve better? Or had I just convinced myself that I did to justify the growing distance between us? The way my heart raced when Miles texted, the elaborate fantasies I'd been building about a different life. "Mummy, why do you look sad?" Aiden had returned, his face clean but concerned. "I'm not sad, baby. Just concentrating on dinner. Daddy says you work too hard. Daddy says a lot of things." The words came out sharper than I intended. Aiden's face fell. "Are you mad at Daddy?" "No, sweetie. Mummy's just tired. Why don't you go play until dinner?" As Aiden left, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. 32 years old, still attractive, still young enough to start over, still young enough to find someone who appreciated me, who challenged me, who made me feel alive, instead of slowly suffocating in domestic routine. The doorbell rang. The guests were arriving for Evan's birthday celebration, and I hadn't even started the main course. Perfect. Another opportunity to look like the wife who couldn't quite get it together. But as I heard Evan's cheerful voice greeting his brother Joel at the door, I realized something had shifted inside me. I was done pretending, done playing the grateful wife to a man who bored me to tears, done hiding my resentment behind forced smiles and birthday dinners. Tonight was going to be different. Tonight, the truth was going to come out, whether I planned it or not. I could feel it building inside me like a storm. The next morning, I sat across from Miles at Sunrise Cafe, our usual spot. The diner was busy with the breakfast crowd, which made it perfect for hiding in plain sight. Miles looked good in his navy suit, the kind of professional polish that Evan would never have. Insurance sales had been good to him. "So, how was the birthday party?" Miles stirred his coffee, not really looking at me. This was new. Usually he hung on my every word about Evan, seeming to enjoy the drama of our secret meetings. Awkward, painful, the usual family gathering where everyone pretends we're happy. I leaned forward. "I kept thinking about you the whole time." Miles finally looked up, but something was different in his expression. Cooler. "Lyris, we need to talk about this." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "This thing between us. It's getting complicated." "Complicated how?" I tried to keep my voice light, flirtatious. "I thought you liked complicated." "I like fun. I like our coffee dates and texting. But you're talking about your husband like you hate him. And that's..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "That's heavy." Heavy. Miles thought my marriage problems were heavy. This from the man who'd been encouraging me to meet him, who'd been sending me messages that made me feel alive again. "You said I deserved better than Evan. I said you seemed unhappy. That's different than saying you should blow up your marriage." I stared at him. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we should cool it for a while. Take a step back." The words hit me like cold water. Miles was backing away, right when I was finally ready to be honest about what I wanted. Right when I was starting to imagine a real future that didn't include Evan's boring teacher stories and quiet suburban evenings. "Is this because of something at work? Did someone say something?" "No, it's just..." Miles looked around the cafe nervously. "Look, you're great, Lyris. But you're married. You have a kid. This was supposed to be light, you know? Fun. Fun." I was risking my marriage for fun. My phone rang. Patricia, my mother. "Hi, Mom." "Lyris, honey, where are you? I tried calling the house." I glanced at Miles, who was checking his own phone now, clearly wanting this conversation to end. "I'm just grabbing coffee before work. What's up?" "I wanted to check on you after last night. You seemed tense during Evan's party." Tense. That was one way to put it. I'd spent the entire evening making subtle jabs at my husband while fantasizing about the man sitting across from me, who was now apparently having second thoughts about our entire relationship. "I'm fine, Mom, just tired." "You work too much, sweetheart. Maybe you should take some time off, spend it with Aiden and Evan." Spend time with Evan. The thought made my chest tight. "I can't take time off right now. We have deadlines." It wasn't true. My insurance processing job was routine, predictable. But work was where Miles was. Work was where I felt like myself, instead of just Evan's wife and Aiden's mother. "Well, don't forget what's important," Mom said. "Family comes first." After I hung up, Miles was already standing. "I should get to the office." "Miles, wait." I reached for his hand, but he pulled away gently. "Let's just take a break, okay? Figure out what we really want." I watched him leave, feeling something crumble inside me. The one bright spot in my days, the one person who made me feel interesting and desirable, was walking away. And I was going home to Evan, who would ask about my day with genuine interest that I found suffocating. As I sat alone in the cafe, I noticed a familiar car in the parking lot. Evan's old Honda Civic. My blood went cold. Had he seen me with Miles? Had he been watching? I quickly gathered my things and headed for my car, but Evan was nowhere to be seen. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But as I drove to work, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that the careful balance I'd been maintaining between my real life and my fantasy life was starting to collapse. At the office, I tried to focus on claims processing, but my mind kept drifting. Miles was 3 cubicles away, but he might as well have been on another planet. He was polite when we passed in the hallway, professional during meetings, but the spark was gone. The secret smiles, the lingering looks, the texts that made my heart race, all of it had evaporated overnight. By lunch, I was furious at Miles for leading me on and then pulling away. Furious at Evan for being so oblivious to my unhappiness. Furious at myself for getting caught between a fantasy and a reality that neither one satisfied me. My phone buzzed. A text from Aiden's school. "Aiden seems upset today. Says Mommy and Daddy were fighting. Please call if there are concerns at home." We hadn't been fighting. We barely talked anymore. But somehow our 8-year-old son was picking up on the tension, the distance, the slow dissolution of everything we'd built together. I stared at the message, feeling the weight of what I was doing. Not just to Evan, but to Aiden, to our family, to the life we'd created together, however imperfect it might be. But instead of guilt, I felt something else rising in my chest. Resentment, anger at being trapped in a life that felt too small, too quiet, too ordinary. Anger at Evan for not being enough, for not making me feel the way Miles had, even briefly. That evening, as I drove home to face another quiet dinner and another evening of polite distance, I made a decision. I was done pretending. Done protecting everyone else's feelings while my own happiness withered away. If Miles didn't want complicated, fine. But I wasn't going to keep sacrificing myself for a marriage that felt more like a prison sentence every day. The storm that had been building was about to break, and I didn't care who got caught in it. Evan's birthday party was supposed to be simple. Family, a few friends, dinner at home. I'd managed to pull together a decent meal despite my distracted state, and our living room was filled with the usual suspects. June and her husband Robert, Evan's brother Joel, with his wife Sarah, my sister Tara, and a couple of Evan's teacher friends. The wine was flowing, and I was drinking more than usual. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. Evan was being his typical gracious host self, thanking everyone for coming, making sure everyone had enough food. The perfect husband, the perfect father, the perfect son. It made me want to scream. "Lyris, this lasagna is amazing," said June, always trying to build bridges. "You're such a wonderful cook." "Thanks. I refilled my wine glass, ignoring Evan's concerned glance. It's just something I threw together. Don't be modest, said Joel. Evan's lucky to have you. Lucky? The word stuck in my throat. Was Evan lucky? Or was he just settling for a wife who resented him more every day? How's work going, Lyris? Asked Sarah, Joel's wife. Still processing insurance claims? Still processing. I took another sip of wine. Same old routine, same old everything. Tara caught my eye from across the room and raised her eyebrows. She could sense my mood shifting, the careful facade starting to crack. Well, routine can be good, said one of Evan's teacher friends, a woman named Linda. Stability is underrated these days. Stability. Another word that made me want to throw something. Is it, though? Sometimes stability just means being stuck. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Evan was looking at me with that concerned expression again, the one that made me feel like a problem to be solved. Maybe we should do the cake, he said gently. Aiden's been waiting all day to sing happy birthday. Aiden appeared with the cake I'd made, his face bright with excitement. At 8, he still believed in family celebrations, still thought his parents were happy. The innocence in his smile made something twist painfully in my chest. We sang happy birthday. Evan blew out the candles, making a wish I was sure I didn't want to know about. Then Joel stood up with his wine glass. I'd like to make a toast to my brother, he said. Evan, you're one of the good guys, a devoted teacher, a loving father, and a loyal husband. We're all lucky to have you in our lives. Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too, but the words felt like mockery. Devoted, loving, loyal, all the things that should matter, that any reasonable woman would appreciate. So why did they feel like chains? To Evan, everyone chorused. Actually, I heard myself saying, my voice louder than I intended. I'd like to say something too. The room went quiet. Evan looked surprised but pleased. He probably thought I was going to say something sweet, something that would smooth over the tension that had been building all evening. I stood up, wine glass in hand, feeling the alcohol buzzing through my system. To my husband Evan, I began, and I could see him starting to smile. Who is... The words hung in the air. I could feel everyone watching me, waiting. Tara was shaking her head slightly, sensing danger. June looked expectant. Evan looked hopeful. Who is the biggest mistake of my life? The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the clock ticking on the mantel, someone's sharp intake of breath, the sound of a wine glass being set down too hard. Evan's face went completely white, then red, then something I'd never seen before, cold and distant and final. Lyris, June gasped. What are you saying? I'm saying what everyone's thinking, I continued, the words pouring out like poison. That I married a man with no ambition, no passion, no drive. A man who's content to grade papers for the rest of his life while I waste away in suburban mediocrity. Mum, Aiden whispered, his voice small and scared. Evan stood up slowly. I think everyone should go home. Evan, honey, June started. Now. His voice was calm but firm. Please, everyone just go. The room erupted in awkward movement. People gathering coats, making excuses, avoiding eye contact. Joel put a hand on Evan's shoulder, but Evan shrugged it off. Tara grabbed my arm. Lyris, what the hell are you doing? I'm telling the truth for once. The wine was making me bold, reckless. I'm tired of pretending. You're drunk, she hissed, and you're destroying your family. My family was already destroyed. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. Within 10 minutes, the house was empty except for our small family. Aiden was crying quietly in the corner. Evan was standing by the window, his back to us, his shoulders rigid. Daddy? Aiden's voice was barely a whisper. Evan turned around, and I saw something in his face that sobered me instantly. Not hurt, not anger, something much worse. Resolution. Go to your room, buddy, he said gently to Aiden. Everything's going to be okay. But Mom said, your mom had too much wine. Just go upstairs. I'll be up to tuck you in soon. After Aiden left, Evan looked at me for a long moment. Is that really how you feel? The question was simple, direct. I could have taken it back, could have blamed the alcohol, apologized, tried to rebuild what I'd just torn down. Instead, I doubled down. Yes, it is. He nodded slowly. Okay then. Okay then what? Okay then, I guess we're done. He walked past me toward the stairs, and I realized with growing panic that this wasn't going according to any script I'd imagined. Evan was supposed to fight for me, argue with me, try to win me back. He wasn't supposed to just accept it. Evan, wait. He paused on the stairs. What, Lyris? We should talk about this. I think you said everything you needed to say. His voice was eerily calm. In front of my family, on my birthday, in front of our son. The weight of what I'd done was starting to hit me. I was angry. I've been unhappy. I know. I've known for months. I just kept hoping. He shook his head. It doesn't matter now. Of course it matters. We have Aiden to think about. Yes, we do. And he just watched his mother humiliate his father in front of his entire family. So we definitely have Aiden to think about. Evan continued up the stairs, leaving me alone in the wreckage of our living room. Birthday cake on the table, wine glasses abandoned, the detritus of a celebration that had become a funeral. My phone was buzzing with texts. The family group chat was probably exploding, but I couldn't bring myself to look. Instead, I poured another glass of wine and sat in the silence, wondering how a moment of honesty had felt so much like destruction. Upstairs, I could hear Evan's gentle voice reading Aiden a bedtime story, the same routine he'd maintained every night for 8 years. Devoted, loving, loyal, the biggest mistake of my life. But as I sat there in the aftermath of my own words, I was starting to wonder who had really made the mistake. I woke up on the couch with a splitting headache and the immediate sinking realization that last night had actually happened. The living room still smelled like wine and birthday cake, and my phone was buzzing incessantly on the coffee table. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages. The family group chat had exploded overnight. June, I can't believe what I witnessed last night. Evan doesn't deserve this. Joel, what the hell, Lyris? On his birthday. Patricia, my mum. Lyris, please call me. I'm worried about Aiden. Tara, you need damage control. Now. I scrolled through message after message, each one making my stomach churn more. But the worst part was what I didn't see. Nothing from Evan. Radio silence from my own husband. I stumbled upstairs to find our bedroom empty, the bed made. Evan's side looked like it hadn't been slept in. I found him in the guest room, fully dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed with a notebook in his lap. Evan? He looked up and his face was completely neutral. No anger, no hurt, just nothing. Somehow that was worse than yelling would have been. Good morning, Lyris. About last night. Aiden's at my mother's. I dropped him off early. He closed the notebook and stood up. He was asking questions I didn't know how to answer. Guilt hit me like a physical blow. What kind of questions? Why Mommy said Daddy was a mistake. Whether we're getting divorced, whether it's his fault. Evan's voice remained calm, but I could see the muscle in his jaw twitching. 8-year-old questions that no child should have to ask. I'll talk to him. I'll explain. Explain what? That you meant it, or that you were lying? Evan picked up the notebook. Because either way, he heard his mother call his father the biggest mistake of her life in front of his entire family. I noticed the notebook in his hands. What's that? Nothing you need to worry about. He moved toward the door. I'm going to work. It's Saturday. I have papers to grade, and I need some space to think. After he left, I sat in the empty house, the silence oppressive. My phone rang. My mother. Lyris Marie, what in God's name happened last night? I had too much wine. I said things I shouldn't have. You humiliated that man in front of his entire family. On his birthday. What's wrong with you? The disappointment in her voice was crushing. My mother had always liked Evan, had always said I was lucky to find someone so steady and kind. I've been unhappy, Mum, for a long time. So you talk to your husband, you go to counselling, you don't destroy him publicly. You don't understand. I understand that you have a good man who loves you and provides for his family, and you just threw it away for what? Drama. After she hung up, I tried calling Tara, but she didn't answer. I tried texting Miles, hoping for some support, some reminder of why I'd been so dissatisfied with my marriage. Can we talk? Had a rough night. His response came hours later. Think we should keep things professional from now on. This is getting too complicated. Miles was cutting me off completely. The man I'd been fantasizing about, the one who'd made me feel alive and interesting, was backing away now that my marriage was actually falling apart. I spent the day cleaning up from the party, each wine glass and dirty plate a reminder of how spectacularly I'd destroyed everything. By evening, I was desperate to fix things, to somehow undo the damage. When Evan came home, I was waiting in the kitchen with his favorite dinner prepared. We need to talk, I said. Do we? He sat down at the table but didn't touch the food. I think you were pretty clear last night. I was drunk. I was angry. I didn't mean... Which part didn't you mean? That I'm a mistake? That I have no ambition? That you're wasting away in suburban mediocrity? His voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. Because those were pretty specific complaints for someone who was just drunk. I sat down across from him. I've been feeling trapped. Like we got married too young, settled down too fast. Like I never got to figure out who I really am. And who are you really, Lyris? The question caught me off guard. Who was I? A woman having an emotional affair with a coworker who didn't want me. A mother who'd traumatized her 8-year-old son. A wife who'd publicly humiliated her husband. I don't know, I admitted. Well, let me tell you who I am, Evan said quietly. I'm a man who's spent 12 years trying to make you happy, who's supported your career, helped with housework, taken care of our son, and never once complained about your late nights at work or your constant criticism of our life together. Evan, I'm also a man who's been documenting every cruel comment, every time you've put me down in front of others, every instance of you choosing work over family. He pulled out that notebook again. Because I knew this day would come. My blood went cold. What do you mean, documenting? I mean, I've been keeping records, dates, times, witnesses. Your sister's texts about how boring I am. Your mother's concerns about Aiden. The school's calls about him being upset. Evan opened the notebook and I could see pages of careful handwriting. I've been preparing for this conversation for months. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself and our son. He closed the notebook again, because I knew eventually you'd either leave or force me to make this choice. What choice? Evan stood up. The choice to save what's left of my dignity and Aiden's emotional well-being. What are you saying? I'm saying I want a divorce, Lyris, and I want primary custody of Aiden. The words hit me like a slap. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. One fight doesn't mean... This wasn't one fight. This was the culmination of years of disrespect and emotional abuse. Evan's calm facade was finally cracking. And last night, you did it in front of our son. That's where I draw the line. I stared at him, seeing a stranger. This wasn't the gentle, accommodating man I'd married. This was someone who'd been quietly planning, preparing, documenting. I won't agree to a divorce. You don't have to agree. I'm filing on Monday. He headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Lyris, I'd recommend getting a lawyer. A good one. As the door closed behind him, I sat alone in our kitchen, finally understanding the magnitude of what I'd done. I'd thought I was just being honest about my feelings. I'd thought I was finally standing up for myself. Instead, I'd handed my husband everything he needed to destroy me. Monday morning at the insurance office felt like walking into a minefield. I could sense the whispers before I even reached my cubicle, the way conversation stopped when I passed by. News traveled fast in a small office, and apparently my public meltdown had become weekend entertainment. "Rough weekend?" asked Janet from HR, appearing at my desk with a concerned expression that didn't reach her eyes. "Just family stuff," I mumbled, trying to focus on my computer screen. "Well, when you have a moment, could you stop by my office? I need to discuss your timesheet discrepancies." My stomach dropped. Timesheet discrepancies? Nothing urgent, just some questions about your logged hours versus your actual time in the office. Janet's smile was professionally neutral. "Whenever you're ready." I glanced toward Miles's cubicle, but he was pointedly avoiding eye contact. 3 days ago, he'd been texting me constantly. Now he was treating me like I had a contagious disease. My phone buzzed. A text from Tara. "Called in sick today. Need to talk strategy." This is bad, Lyris. By lunch, I couldn't concentrate on anything. The HR meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock, and I had a growing suspicion that someone had been paying attention to my extended coffee breaks and mysterious appointments. I tried calling Evan, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried calling June to ask about Aiden, but she hung up on me. I was completely isolated, cut off from my own family, while my professional life crumbled around me. "Lyris?" Janet was standing by my desk again. "Ready for our meeting?" Janet's office felt like an interrogation room. She had a folder on her desk with my name on it, and her expression had shifted from concern to strictly business. "I need to ask you about some inconsistencies in your reported hours," she began, opening the folder. "Over the past 3 months, you've logged several late evenings and weekend work sessions. But security logs show you leaving the building during normal business hours on those days." My mouth went dry. "I might have been working from home on some of those days." "Were you working from home on March 15th, when you logged 4 hours of overtime, but your keycard shows you leaving at 2:30 p.m.? "March 15th. The day I'd met Miles at the cafe, and we'd spent 3 hours talking about my marriage. I'd completely forgotten to adjust my timesheet. I must have made an error. What about April 2nd? Or April 18th? Or last Friday?" Janet was reading from a list. "Lyris, we have documentation of you leaving early or taking extended lunches on days you've claimed overtime pay." I felt trapped, caught in a web of small lies that were adding up to something much bigger. "I can pay back any overpayment. This isn't just about money, it's about honesty and professional integrity." Janet leaned forward. "I also need to ask about your relationship with Miles Farrell." My heart stopped. "What about it?" "Several employees have reported seeing you two together outside of work, extended conversations, what appeared to be personal meetings." Janet's voice remained professional, but I could see the judgment in her eyes. "Given that you're both married, and given these timesheet irregularities, I need to understand the nature of your relationship. We're just friends, co-workers. Friends who meet secretly during work hours? Friends who text each other constantly? Friends whose personal relationship has become office gossip?" I realized with growing horror that everyone knew. My secret affair, my marriage problems, my professional misconduct. It was all out in the open, being dissected by HR like a case study in workplace inappropriate behavior. "I think I should speak with a lawyer before answering any more questions." Janet nodded grimly. "That's your right, but understand that pending our investigation, you're suspended without pay. You'll need to surrender your keycard and any company property." The walk out of the office was the longest of my life. I could feel every eye on me, could hear the whispered conversation starting before I even reached the elevator. My career, my reputation, my financial independence, all of it was crumbling because of a few coffee dates and some fudged timesheets. In the parking garage, I sat in my car and finally let myself cry. Not just about the job, but about everything. The divorce papers that were probably being filed at that very moment. Aiden, who was staying with his grandmother because he was afraid to come home. Miles, who disappeared the moment things got complicated. My phone rang, an unknown number. Mrs. Vane, this is David Chen from Peterson, Chen and Associates. I'm calling to inform you that you have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. regarding your husband's petition for divorce. I didn't schedule any meeting. The court requires both parties to attend mediation before proceeding with contested custody arrangements. Your husband's attorney has provided substantial documentation supporting his case for primary custody. Substantial documentation, Evan's notebook full of dates and incidents, probably supplemented by witness statements from Saturday night. My public humiliation was about to become legal evidence. I need to find my own lawyer. I'd recommend doing so quickly, Mrs. Vane. Your husband's case appears to be quite comprehensive. After hanging up, I sat in the silence of the parking garage, finally understanding the full scope of what Evan had been planning. While I'd been fantasizing about Miles and complaining about my boring life, my husband had been quietly building a case against me. He'd documented my emotional distance, my work irregularities, my public disrespect. He'd probably recorded my cruel comments, saved my sister's texts, gathered witness statements from family members who'd watched me tear him down. The gentle, accommodating man I'd taken for granted had been methodically preparing for war, and I was about to discover just how thoroughly he intended to win. That evening, I came home to an empty house and a manila envelope on the kitchen table. Inside were divorce papers, a temporary custody arrangement giving Evan primary physical custody, and a restraining order preventing me from discussing the case with Aiden or interfering with his school activities. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note in Evan's careful teacher script. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but you won't find it at our son's expense. I was completely alone, professionally destroyed, and legally outmaneuvered by the man I'd called the biggest mistake of my life. The irony was devastating. The law office of Peterson, Chen and Associates occupied the top floor of a downtown building that made me feel small and out of place. I'd managed to hire Sarah Martinez, a divorce attorney who'd agreed to see me on short notice, but her expression after reviewing Evan's filing had been grim. "This is comprehensive," she said, flipping through pages of documentation. "Your husband's legal team has built a very strong case. It can't be that bad. One argument doesn't justify taking my son away." Sarah looked at me over her reading glasses. "Mrs. Vane, this isn't about one argument. According to these documents, your husband has been documenting a pattern of emotional abuse, professional misconduct, and parental neglect for over 6 months." She spread the papers across her desk like evidence at a crime scene. "Text messages between you and your sister mocking your husband, testimony from family members about public humiliation, school records showing your son's declining emotional state, security footage from your workplace showing you leaving during claimed work hours, and that's just the beginning." My hands were shaking as I looked at the evidence of my own destruction. How is any of this legal? He was spying on me. He was protecting himself. Everything here was obtained legally: public statements, workplace records, family communications. Sarah's voice was matter-of-fact. "Mrs. Vane, did you have an extramarital affair?" "No, not physical. I just talked to someone from work." "During work hours, meeting secretly, emotional intimacy outside your marriage?" I couldn't answer. When she put it like that, my relationship with Miles sounded exactly like what it was: an affair in everything but the physical act. And the timesheet fraud. I made some mistakes with my hours, nothing major. According to HR's investigation, you've been paid for approximately 40 hours of work you didn't perform. That's not a mistake, Mrs. Vane. That's theft. The meeting with Evan's legal team was scheduled for 10 a.m. Sarah had warned me to stay calm, answer only direct questions, and let her handle the legal arguments. But nothing could have prepared me for the sight of Evan sitting across from me, flanked by two attorneys, looking like a stranger. "Mrs. Vane," said the lead attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Rebecca Torres, "we're here to discuss custody arrangements and division of assets. Your husband is seeking primary physical custody of your son Aiden, with supervised visitation for you pending completion of anger management and family counseling." "Supervised visitation? He's my son. Your son who witnessed you publicly humiliate his father and call their marriage the biggest mistake of your life," Torres replied coolly. "Your son who's been asking his grandmother if it's his fault his parents are fighting. Your son who's been displaying anxiety symptoms at school." She slid a folder across the table. "These are statements from Aiden's teacher, the school counselor, and your mother-in-law documenting the emotional impact of your behavior." I opened the folder with trembling hands. There was a drawing Aiden had made at school, a family picture with Mommy standing far away from Daddy and a little boy, with dark scribbles covering the sky. The teacher's note said he'd been withdrawn, anxious, asking repeatedly if his family was breaking up. "This is taken out of context," I said desperately. "I love my son." "I'm sure you do," Torres replied, "but love isn't enough when a child's emotional well-being is at stake." Evan spoke for the first time. "I want what's best for Aiden. He needs stability right now." "Stability?" I looked at him incredulously. "You're the one filing for divorce. You're the one breaking up our family. I'm the one protecting our son from further damage." Evan's voice was calm but firm. "Lyris, you've made it clear that you consider our marriage a mistake. I'm simply accepting that and trying to minimize the impact on Aiden." Torres opened another folder. "We're also prepared to discuss financial arrangements. Given your recent termination from employment and the circumstances surrounding it, Mr. Vane will be seeking primary financial responsibility for Aiden's care." "Termination?" Sarah looked at me sharply. I hadn't told her about being fired. The HR investigation had concluded over the weekend, and I'd received the termination notice Sunday night. Timesheet fraud, inappropriate workplace relationships, violation of professional conduct standards. "You didn't mention you'd been fired," Sarah whispered. Torres smiled coldly. "It seems Mrs. Vane has been less than forthcoming about several aspects of her situation." The meeting continued for 2 hours, each revelation more devastating than the last. Evan's team had bank records showing my spending patterns, including charges at restaurants during my supposed work meetings with Miles. They had testimony from co-workers about my inappropriate relationship. They even had a recording from Saturday night. Apparently, someone at the party had been filming when I made my toast. "We're prepared to offer generous visitation rights," Torres concluded. "Every other weekend, supervised initially, with the possibility of unsupervised visits after 6 months of counseling and stable employment." "Generous?" I stared at her. "You're taking my son away and calling it generous." "We're protecting a child from an unstable environment," Torres replied. "Your husband has been the primary caregiver throughout your marriage. He has stable employment, a support system, and a clean record. You have none of those things." After the meeting, I sat in Sarah's office feeling completely defeated. "What are my options?" I asked. "Limited," she replied honestly. "We could fight this, but it would be expensive and you'd likely lose. The evidence is overwhelming, and frankly, continuing to fight would probably make you look worse." "So I just give up? Let him take my son?" "You accept reality and focus on rebuilding your relationship with Aiden. Complete the counseling requirements, find stable employment, prove you can be a responsible parent." Sarah's voice softened slightly. "Mrs. Vane, your husband isn't trying to destroy you. He's trying to protect your son. There's a difference." That evening, I sat alone in my empty house, surrounded by the wreckage of my life. No job, no husband, limited access to my son. The man I'd called boring and unambitious had outmaneuvered me completely, using the very legal system I'd never bothered to understand. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Divorce papers will be filed tomorrow. Custody arrangement takes effect immediately. Aiden's things are packed. You can pick them up from my mother's house. Evan. I drove to June's house, but she answered the door with Aiden's suitcase already waiting. Where is he? I asked. Asleep. It's been a difficult few days. June's voice was cold but not cruel. Lyris, I don't know what happened to you, but this isn't who you used to be. I'm still his mother. Then act like it. Get help. Fix yourself. Because that little boy deserves better than what you've been giving him. As I drove home with Aiden's belongings in my back seat, I finally understood what I'd lost. Not just a marriage I'd taken for granted, but my son's trust, my family's respect, my own sense of who I was supposed to be. The biggest mistake of my life hadn't been marrying Evan. It had been destroying the best thing I'd ever had,